Welcome to Wines and Wonders with Kirsten Fox. True stories with a side of wine. Looking for inspiration for your life and your wine glass? This is your podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to Wines and Wonders with Kirsten and Dannielle, a somm and a shaman. So we have been talking in this season about getting ahead of the end, and we've been following Kirsten's journey with her mom and the process that they have taken as a family in the preparation for the passing of Kirsten's mom. This is our last episode for our season, Getting Ahead of the End, and we're going to be looking at mom's wishes. We're going to be looking at what that looked like for her as she was very much a part of her own process and very much a part of what her wishes were and very much a part of how she wanted to die with dignity. So Kirsten, last week we talked about...
Yeah, so I'll do a little overview for those of you who may not have or it might have been a while since you listened to it or you haven't listened to it yet. We talked about my family experience where I had a mom that did get ahead of the end. We all knew her wishes. She was the one that chose the date to move herself into a care facility, or at least a shared facility where she had people around her. And so we talked about that and how much easier it was on us as family members who loved her, where we weren't necessarily needing to intercede on her part. And we didn't have to do something that she was fighting against, which I know a lot of families have to deal with. My little sister, Allison, we got a chance to interview her because she was the one that actually went to San Diego to help my mom move into the shared facility, which was independent living where my mom moved. But they did have other options for later in life where you needed more help. And so that was what we focused on, and how dealing with a parent who is willing to look at that part of their lives and embrace it versus having a parent who is fighting it. The family's dealing with a lot more emergencies, and how much more stressful that is, and how my sisters and I had a very lucky experience based on my mom's wishes. So we're moving this week into the last phase of our discussion about this. This is going to be our last episode in this season, and we're calling it Mom's Wishes, focused specifically on what my mom wanted to happen that she had made very clear at the end of her life. She came to live with me when, so to start the story, she had lived in independent living for a good 4 or 5 years. And I did get a lot of calls one week from her friends at the facility who were saying, Sandy is really confused. She is talking about you girls being here. She's wearing weird clothes. We're very concerned about her. So I got her doctor's team over to her unit to look at her and do some assessment. And they took some blood and did a little physical there with her. And they figured out that she had a UTI, a urinary tract infection, which many of us have had as we've grown up in life. UTIs for young people cause pain, lots of pain, in fact, and as you urinate, and it's really hard to ignore. You typically are at the doctor pretty quickly, and they prescribe antibiotics to get rid of it. That's the normal course for younger people. For older people, they don't have as much pain from UTIs at all. In fact, they sometimes don't even know they have one. And it causes an extreme amount of confusion, more than they are confused in a normal day. So my mom came to live with me. She'd made it very clear at this point. She was certainly into dementia, and we as her family knew that she did not want to be moved into memory care. So she was in a confused state, and either we needed to either move her into memory care or she needed to move to my house. So she came to live with me, and she came with the direct, clear message of do not treat me for this UTI. I remember the hospice team came the first day that she arrived. We had her assistant, who had been with her for, I don't even know, 5 or 7 years, fly with her. So I got some time. Her name's Megan, and I just adore her. And so Megan was with us, and my mom's there, and the hospice team shows up to intake her. And the doctor was asking her very pointed questions. I mean, I was terrified that she was going to come, kind of start speaking a different story about what she wanted with the end of her life. And the doctor was asking about, he's like, so I've heard that you don't want to treat this UTI. She's like, nope, I don't. I'm ready to go. And he said, well, he goes, do you have any grandkids? And she goes, oh, yes, I have grandkids. And he said, well, wouldn't you like to see them get married? Would you like to see your great grandchildren? And I was like literally sitting there with my mouth, tightly closed, hoping that my mom could stick with her story that she had made for all of us, that we all knew so well, that she wanted, and didn't fall into what I swear was almost like he was trying to trick her into saying, yeah, that sounds like fun, And I think he was just trying to see how deeply she really was committed to this. And she said, oh, I love my grandchildren, and I'll see them in heaven when they get there. I mean, it was very clear what she said she wanted. And he heard her, and he said, I understand, and we can support you in that at the end of your life here. And so don't you worry about that. We're not going to give you antibiotics, and we'll help make you as comfortable as possible. And so there I am. The hospice team has said they'll make her as comfortable as possible. She's got a UTI. I'm there to fulfill her wishes, and I'm left with like a very happy, demented mom that I've got to take care of, who's, loves my dog and keeps asking when the dog's not there, where's the dog, and where's the dog, and where's the dog, and where's that big dog. So one of the things I did, and I would highly recommend this, if you have a spiritual practice in your life, if you're faced with this as a child, get some help from your spiritual advisors. And so what I did is I brought Dannielle in, and Dannielle helped both me and my mom prepare for what was coming down the pike. And again, she was still okay. I mean, she was still sounding crazy, but she was physically still walking and going upstairs and downstairs and taking care of going to the bathroom herself and feeding herself and everything. So Dannielle, I mean, when I brought you in, I briefed you on the situation. Tell me what it's like for you to be involved in that kind of a situation.
Yeah, well, we had obviously I had been working with you prior for, some years by this point, in the journey with your mom and her choices, and watching the decline and the switches and the changes that needed to happen. And so when it came time for her to move in with you, what is it like for me? What it's like for me is, I look at every client in such regard of their courageousness to come in and trust me with assisting them at that soul level. And so when I work with clients, this is what we're really doing. No matter what topic we're addressing, is that we're looking at it from that place of what's happening in your life and how is this affecting you at a physical level, at a mental, emotional level, at a soul and spiritual level, and what's happening with your energetic system as a whole. And the beauty that I see in what I get to do is to really work with somebody at that most intimate level, that soul level. And so as you asked me to come in and work with your mom, knowing that this was really helping and assisting her in this transition, it's very sweet is how I would describe it. It's emotional, and it's, death. And we've talked about this in our last several series, that death is a really big topic, and we all come to it differently, and culturally even we come to it. And so, with your mom being so clear with her wishes and being so clear with what she wanted and how she wanted it, it was really a beautiful and sweet place to work with her and to assist her in that way. And so what I did with your mom, there's a process in the energetic healing realm where we help a person clear out any heaviness and any density that they're holding on to in their energy body, in their energetic field, specifically in their chakras. So those 7 energy centers that run right up the center line of a person's body are those 7 chakras. And each chakra looks like a spinning vortex of energy. It looks like a funnel, and those funnels will collect heaviness from our emotional, mental states. Just like furniture collects dust. That's what I tell all my clients, that our energy body will pick up heaviness and density from that emotional aspect, just like furniture will pick up dust. And you don't actually watch the process happen. What you see is the end result, right? You see dust on the furniture.
That's amazing. That's a great analogy, because you're right. You can't see it collect. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly you wipe something over the table and you're like, oh, and so you couldn't see it. That's really, so this is something that you're taught as a shaman, and this is an actual process for a transition like death. Is this used elsewhere, or is this a special death process?
Well, this is actually what I do in any session with a client, is I look at their field and I say, okay, where has the density collected in your field and what's going on? And what is the pattern around it? And what is the resource to bring a shift and a change and to raise your vibration? So this is what I do in all sessions. However, with a person who's transitioning, there's a very specific process. And that specific process is that we recognize that this is happening. And so to assist that person in having what I'm going to call an easy transition, is we go in and we clear out all the density, or we dust the energy body, if you will. And so we start at the root chakra, or first chakra, which is, it moves down, it points down to the earth between your legs, moving down and connecting you and grounding you to the earth. And then from there, the chakras run up the body. And so we start at that root chakra, and there's a whole process that I do. We call it a 7 chakra illumination, or a 7 chakra clearing. It's, each person will call it their own thing, but the technique is the same. We work from that root chakra all the way up to the 7th chakra, which is at the top of the head, and it points up towards the sky, towards heaven, towards spirit, towards God, towards that higher power. And we move through and do a process that is very sweet. And we systematically go through each chakra and we clear the density and we lighten or lift the energy body so that it's in a higher vibrational state. So that when mom actually passes, meaning the death process is the physical body actually shuts down, right? That's the process. And so we move through all those chakras and we help the energy body to come into that higher vibration so that when the physical body actually goes through its death process of shutting down, that the soul body, the energy body actually makes its transition fully to the other side, to heaven, to that place where we believe that the spirit of that person is going in their afterlife. And that varies culturally. But what we do know is that when the physical body shuts down and goes through that death process, that the spirit, the soul of that person does transition. And so that's the work that I do with people who are in their death transition from a shamanic perspective. And that's the work that I got to do with your mom, which was a beautiful process with her. And you and I, Kirsten, we were reading to your mom and we had been preparing her.
That was beautiful. Yes. I know you brought a newer book. I mean, you brought a book that I'd never heard of over. I had a book called Proof of Heaven, A Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Afterlife. It's by Eben Alexander, who's a doctor. And this was a neurosurgeon's journey into the afterlife. And it is one of the most comforting books I've ever read in my life, because it talks about his really about a week-long near-death experience where he was technically brain dead. And he had this horrible version of encephalitis. His brain was not registering, and people don't recover from this. Number one, like 95% of the people usually die. And then the 5% who don't have permanent problems. They're permanently brain altered. And this neurosurgeon who has patted people on the head before in his life, and he talks about it in the book. He talks about how he, people would say, "Oh, I saw my dead sister and I got to see," and he's like patting them on the head like, "Yeah, sure you did. It's just your brain working, and okay, that's fine, and here he was for a week long having experiences, and this man, for whatever reason, he says it's divine intervention so that he could share his story with the afterlife or near-death experience. He said, "I was brought back to tell you all about this," and he explained what he went through, and it's very comforting. It's very beautiful. It's it sounds like heaven, and so I chose to read some of the passages that were especially comforting to me as I had gone through reading this book to my mom. As she was taking a downturn, we knew that she was definitely not responding very well, and she's lying in bed. And so we're just reading to her, you and I, and then you brought over a way different book.
Yeah. The Afterlife of Billy Fingers by Annie Kagan is what I brought over. And it's a book that I had read sometime before this point in your mom's journey, and a spectacular book about a man, Billy, who crosses and then comes back and is in touch with his sister Annie and starts to tell her about his experience post-body, is what I call it, right? Because there's still a soul's journey that takes place outside of the human body experience. And Annie, in this book, it's great because Annie thinks that, she's kind of going crazy a little bit. She isn't all bought into this whole thing necessarily about the afterlife and people mediumship and all that kind of stuff. And then here her brother is reaching out to her and contacting her, and she comes to terms with that. And then he says, Annie, we have to write this book together. And, there's a whole process of her getting right with that. And then she tells his story and shares what his experience was for himself in the afterlife. And so we were reading excerpts of that to your mom as well. And that was a really beautiful and special evening in terms, a lot of times when I'm working with clients in this capacity, the family or whomever will bring me in to do that process, that specific process that I was just talking about. We call it the death rites, or like I said, the 7 chakra illumination, where there's very much that technical piece of what are we doing to assist this person. And then, there's an element where it's talking to the family and helping them understand what's going on. And I did actually have the opportunity to work with my grandmother in that way, which was very sweet in that capacity. But to have that opportunity to sit with you and Sandy, and to know that, she had taken a downturn and we had done the energetic aspects for her. And then we were just sharing and being with her and helping to assist her in an easy transition. And I would say that with your mom, she was, there's an aspect she was ready. She wasn't holding on. She wasn't saying, I don't want to leave. She wasn't dealing with that fear of the dying process. And so when that is in the mix, there's a different way in which you work with that. But, in this case, it wasn't like that. Sandy was right there, ready to go for her great adventure.
I had heard, and I've heard it repeatedly a million times, but I'd heard that whether or not the person is consciously talking to you or has their eyes open or whatever, that many, many people, including both of these books, they talk about the fact that they can still hear everybody. So that aspect of knowing that my mom could hear, probably. And also these, I bought The Afterlife of Billy Fingers after you read from it. And both of these books are so comforting to me as a person. It was comforting at the time because I was trying to convey to my mom the comfort of that transition. It surely helps me look at whatever life I'm living, or, and whatever end I have. These books are extremely comforting to the live person as well as the dying person for her.
Yeah.
And just sitting there reading with you was amazing.
Yeah. And that's so much of what we've talked about in this whole season, right? There's the person, the loved one, who is moving through their end of life process, whatever that is. And then there's the family. And then there's all the rest of us who are navigating this with this person and all of what that means. And we have in past episodes given those resources of how to really work with the shifts and changes that are happening. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Have you ever had a friend call you in tears as she explains what she's going through, and you get off the phone and you feel like you just have to do something? Well, there is a company called Uplift Gift that is here for all of us to use when we get those kinds of calls. They have all sorts of different comforting items that they package up in beautiful wrapping and send to your friend, along with a handwritten card from you in the box, so that she feels your love from far away. Uplift Gift, when words aren't enough.
Welcome back to Wines and Wonders. Inspiration for your life and your wine glass.
Welcome back to Wines and Wonders. So we're talking today about mom's wishes. So Kirsten's mom comes to live with her. She has a UTI, and Sandy's wishes were for the UTI to not be treated. So Kirsten, we have mom, she's living with you, she has a downturn. I've come in, we've started to work with the energetics to really help her with that actual transition. And there's still some time before that transition really takes place. So what happens next?
I was really surprised about that, Dannielle. I have to be honest. I mean, once my mom, once she had this downturn, it was, I expected, I've never been around death before. And so I expected once you start going downhill, you're on your way, you're downhill, and it just goes downhill from there. And so the morning after you and I were doing the reading with my mom and all, she was still alive. And so I had expected to be calling my sisters and telling them that mom had passed, but then I'm calling my sisters and saying, mom I had a hospice nurse come over to check her out and say, yeah, something's up. I would call your family. Something's, whether it's a stroke or the infection. He's like, I don't know, but yes, you need to call your family. So my mom was in a bed upstairs I had three bedrooms upstairs in my house. And so she was in one of those bedrooms, and it was a Saturday morning, and I called my sisters and I said, you guys need to get here. They both live in Colorado. So they were like, okay, we'll come. We'll be there by Sunday afternoon. Cause they had to get their dogs taken care of and everything, and then take off Sunday morning. So they show up Sunday afternoon, and wow. Okay. So this is one of the wow moments. There are quite a few, but we were in my mom's room, and one of my neighbors, my daughter would watch her cats, and this wonderful woman. And I didn't know this, but she found out my mom was coming to live with me and that she was under hospice care. And she said, hey, I play harp for hospice patients. Mm-hmm. And she's like, would your sisters like me to come over and play the harp for your mom and you guys? And I'm like, let me check. I said, I think that sounds cool, but that might be a little morbid I don't know. Let me check. So my sisters were like, yeah. So they got in on Sunday afternoon, and I had my friend come over, and she played the harp. And my gosh, talk about a heavenly instrument. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's anything more heavenly related than a harp. I mean, angels play the harps. Like you are like on the path to heaven when you hear a harp, right? So she's playing, and we're sitting there. My youngest daughter's there because she's still living with me, and my two sisters and my mom, and then my friend. And my sister Sarah was sitting on a chair by the bed, and then my sister Allison and I were on the floor. My daughter was on the floor, and then the harpist had a chair and she was playing the harp, and we're just sitting there the music was stunningly beautiful, simple, but absolutely soul reaching. And we were alternately kind of looking at each other and crying. It's going to cheer me up, crying, or laughing about this or that. And my mom, who hasn't said a word in 2 days, she couldn't really talk very well at all. My mom said to my sister, Sarah, see that lady over there in the corner? And she kind of gestured to where I was sitting. And my sister looked over to the corner and she goes, you mean Kirsten? And my mom said, no, the lady above her, get her a glass of wine. And we were like, I was looking up and everyone's looking at the corner of the room. And we all had this moment of understanding that there were other people in this room with us that we couldn't see, that my mom could see. It's very comforting to think about your loved one not being alone, no matter what's going on. Because as the person that's trying to take care of them, you can't be with them 24/7. And you wonder, my God, what's going to happen if I'm not there? They're alone when they die. You know, that kind of a vision of something we all think is somehow horrible. But, you know, there are people there. They might not look like us, but there are definitely people there. And the lady apparently needed a glass of wine that was there. And it even appeared that my mom was kind of at a cocktail party as she was lying in bed, because she would laugh. She would be raising her hands up above her as she's lying there in the bed, point, you know, at this towards the ceiling. And it looked like she was shaking people's hands. And she was muttering like, I mean, she even sounded like she was at some kind of like foreign language cocktail party, because you couldn't understand a word she was saying, but she had inflections, she was laughing. And then this lady apparently needed some wine, clearly enough that she spoke English to us to get it. So anyway, that was a beautiful, it was a beautiful experience. My friend who volunteered to do that was so kind. So then the next day, my mom's in this bed. And the next day, what would be considered her almost regular nurse, who came to watch her while I was off at work normally, came over. And she's like, I mean, this woman had been in the business of taking care of hospice patients for 35 years. And she comes in and she puts her hands on her hips and looks at my mom and says, well, this isn't going to do. And she pointed at me and said, we need to get a hospital bed in the living room downstairs where there's more activity. So you order a hospital bed through hospice and get us a portable toilet and a portable desk that can get over her bed. And you go get a chair. To my other sister who was standing there, you go get a chair. We're going to get her down these stairs. And so we're all off doing our thing. And this nurse was helping to get my mom up, because I didn't know how to get my mom up. None of us did. She was not able to walk. We didn't know what to do. So she gets my mom changed and up, and not up physically standing on her feet, but sitting up at least. And we, she said, okay, everyone come back in. We're going to get your mom down the stairs. So we stand my mom at the top of the stairs at my house. And these are narrow, tall stairs. They are not a wide staircase. And so my mom is sitting in a chair that the nurse had asked my sister to get. She's sitting there in the chair, and the nurse is telling us what's going to happen. And she goes, so what we're going to do is we're going to get a towel, and we're going to sit it on the stairs, and we're going to, your mom's going to sit on the towel. We're going to slowly just bump her butt, down the stairs, so that she's not standing, because we can't fit. She needed two people. I mean, she couldn't walk straight, so she needed people on both sides of her. We couldn't have gotten her down the stairs together, all of us. And so she's like, so that's what we're going to do. And I looked at this woman. I can't remember her name. Oh, I'm going to call her Louise, but I just loved her. And I looked at Louise and I said, Louise, I know that you know what you're doing, and I know that that would probably work. But I said, people have told me that if you call the fire department, they will come over to your house and they will carry elderly people around the house, your house. It's kind of some of their community service that they do. And I said, you know what? I said, I think that this house full of feminine energy could use at least a little bit of masculine energy, figuring that some of these firefighters are going to be men. And I said, so what do you think about that? And the nurse, Louise, looks back at me and she goes, yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea. And my sister's nodding. She's like, I think I might go get some makeup on, my sister said. And my mom is sitting there with this big grin at the top of the stairs. And I looked at my mom, and we all look at my mom because she's got this huge grin. And she goes, I get first dibs. And we all, like, she had said so little that we could understand. And so to have her say that, which actually ended up being the last full sentence that she spoke, it was just beautiful. And I will tell you that the entirely male team of firefighters came over in the fire truck, parked in front of my house. And all of them, I don't know whether they had to send headshots in to get a job at the Park City Fire Department, because they could have been like in the calendars. They were so handsome. And they walked in and, it was, hi, I'm Dan. Hi, I'm Hal. Hi, I'm Sam. And then the fire chief. So it's 3 guys that work, like, I don't know what you call them, but the normal firefighters. And then the chief comes. And the chief could have been George Clooney's twin. Like, I am like, oh, I can hardly speak. Comes in, seriously, these men, they have it so perfectly down. They pick up the chair. My mom is got the biggest grin I've ever seen on her face as they carry her down the stairs on the chair. It was like she was the queen of Sheba. And, they move her to the couch as we wait for the hospital bed to come in. And I mean, these guys, we got pictures with them. And, the captain says as he's leaving and the guys are leaving, and he says, if there's anything you need, ma'am, anything, don't hesitate to call, engine blah, blah at station blah, blah. And I was like, oh, dear, my friend, you have just extended an invitation that is one of the best I've ever heard in my life. But anyway, so that goes on. My mom's now downstairs. We get the hospital bed, and my mom, so here's the challenge that happens now, because my mom did not make her transition for 12 days. Mm-hmm. I thought it was imminent. It was 12 days. And because she didn't want to treat the UTI and we knew she wanted to die, we did not feed her or give her water, because we knew she wanted us to assist her in leaving, in transitioning.
And that's the protocol in that scenario.
It is very challenging when you love someone and you're watching them. Now, by the way, she didn't ask for it. She didn't ask for any water or food, which is, thank goodness. We had one nurse who did say at one point during this 12 days, can I get you a glass of water, Sandy? And my mom said, sure. Like, she was agreeing. She wasn't asking for it, but she was agreeing. And I took that nurse away and I to the side, and I said, you can't do that. If you aren't, I understand it's hard, but if you can't support us in supporting what my mom wants, we need to get a different nurse over here. So anyway, she was like, okay, that's right. I forgot. I'm sorry. And then my sisters are there, right? And we've got family. We are 3 girls, and man, I'm the oldest. My sister Sarah's the middle. Allison's the youngest. And we are back at 3 years old, 6 years old, and 8 years old. Man, we are every one of our family dynamics of bossy older sister and little brat little sister and, pouty middle sister, or whatever it is coming out all over the place. And this piece I know you've talked about, and I know you've talked about how the family dynamics are changing as someone's passing and after they pass. And what do you say about this situation? We didn't have you over in the middle of this.
Right.
You probably could have helped us, but I was just drinking wine and trying to get my way through it.
Yes. Well, it's a dynamic that is not uncommon for old patterns to resurface, because everybody's under stress. Everybody's under stress, and not just the stress of what is this day-to-day activity that needs to happen, and how are we supporting mom, and what hospice nurse is in the house today, and all of those kinds of what I'm going to call in this dynamic normal stressors, but there's the emotional stress. There's the fact that not only are you dealing with daily logistical things, and Kirsten, you were working through this whole thing as well, right? And you have your own daughter who's living at home with you, et cetera, et cetera. And it's coming to terms with the shift in the change in not only the relationship engagement, meaning that you three girls became the primary caretakers for mom. And we talked about that in one of the episodes, was pretty much dedicated to, what happens when we have to shift that role all of a sudden, when the child becomes in that parental role, if you will, and the parent becomes in that child role, and being able to recognize it. But now you have you three girls under one roof who are dealing with the daily stuff, dealing with the shift in the engagement, but dealing with the fact that their mom is in the midst of her death transition. And it's the grief, it's the loss, it's the letting go, it's the I'm mentally prepared for this, but I'm not emotionally prepared for it. And we've touched on that, but there's those different levels of engagement that we are always accessing, all of us, whether we realize it or not. There's the literal physical level of engagement. Mom's dying. That's the literal physical level of engagement. The facts are what the facts are. There's the mental emotional level of engagement. Mom's dying. How is this affecting me? How do I feel about this? Right. And that within that, there's also another kind of level where you understand logically, mom's dying, this is what's happening, but emotionally it's drudging up all kinds of things. And then there's the soul level of what's happening, which is, and the beauty is that you guys had the opportunity to recognize that mom's not alone. She's seeing people, she's being greeted by people, she's, you've read the books, there's a deep understanding of what's happening. There's the celebration of fulfilling her wishes, right? So that's soul level stuff. And so all of this is going on at the same time. And people are trying to process and deal and sort and bite their tongue and say what needs to be said. And the reverting into the childhood patterns is really that hardwired patterning, right? It's the habituated patterning, if you will. How many years did you guys, live growing up together? For you, at least 18 of them, right? In this dynamic where you played your role as oldest sister and oldest child to your parents and whatever. So here you are, you're under stress, mom's dying, you're dealing with loss, you're dealing with grief, you're dealing with logistics, your sisters are out of town, they're not in their own homes, and bam.
Yeah.
You guys have old patterns resurfacing.
So yeah, it was, I would swear right now, but it was a show, and everyone around me knows probably what I was going to call it. It would be an SH show. And my sister, we got through it. My sisters ended up leaving before my mom passed, because they were there almost a week and she was still alive. And, it just was like, there was nothing they could do except bother each other. They've fought their whole lives, by the way. My two sisters. It was literally like I had to sit in the middle seat of the back seat of the car. I've talked about that before. Mm-hmm. They fought and they fought and they fought. And finally, it just ended up being better for them to leave. And what was interesting is my sisters have left. I have my peaceful house back. I turn on like The Sting. My mom loved The Sting. We used to watch The Sting, as a family. So I found it on Netflix or wherever, and we're watching The Sting together. And, she's just lying in the bed, but I'm hoping she can hear the music and everything. And I think I felt really happy. And I think I do remember bringing you back in at that stage to do a house clearing, to clear the energy of the stress that had been there with my sisters. which really did help clear the energy in the house. But then, so my mom then passed away like a week and a half later on a Wednesday. I remember on Monday night, I had two simultaneous events going on the next day, big corporate events that I had two different teams going out to execute. I was running one of the events, and I remember my mom, man, she's a planner, as she handed down to me for sure. And I remember standing by her bed that Monday night, and I was like, Mom, I said, I have two really big events tomorrow, and I can't get a phone call or a text in the middle of these events. It will complete. I've got to finish these events. And I said, so either you need to die right now, or you need to wait till Wednesday. And that glorious woman took a deep breath, and I'm like, all right, then we have a deal. And I left on Tuesday hoping that the events would go okay. And I left her with a nurse, and I got home, no messages. Nope. She was still alive. And then Wednesday morning, she passed away. And we had, it was, I wasn't there. I had gone to get my nails done in a really awful twist of guilt forevermore in my life. I was out getting my nails done when my mom passed away, but I do know she was not alone for sure. Mm-hmm. And I needed to get my nails done because I was still working, for gosh sakes. But then my family goes along, and what interestingly happened was my sisters. Oh, I did tell my mom at one point while she was just lying there in the bed, and I hoped she was listening. I said, Mom, I'm done with taking care of Sarah and Allison. I'm not responsible for their relationship anymore. And I said, I'm done with trying to help explain each of them to the other. And I'm like, you're going to have some serious work to do in heaven. And you know what? She did some work in heaven, from heaven after she died, because my sisters started talking. My sisters started doing things together. They live in Colorado. They live like an hour away from each other. And it was my mom's ashes, sprinkling my mom's ashes in the mountains, that brought them first together. Mm-hmm. And so that relationship has softened it so dramatically. And so that transition for our family it's been amazing. Absolutely amazing. Anything you'd want to add on family transitions and that before we take our break?
That there's always that opportunity to recognize, as one person leaves this world, to look at how we want to spend the rest of our days. I mean, it sounds so cliche, and it is to some degree, but for all of us who have witnessed the death of a family member, there's truth in that cliche, that there comes a point where you look at it and you say, it's precious, life is, and our opportunity and our quality of time together. And I will also say, from a perspective of doing what I do and working with clients and working with the energetics and my skill set of being able to navigate different realms, that a lot of times in my client work, I will be working with somebody, and the spirit of a loved one, a family member, will often come in to give a message to the client. So kind of circling back to this afterlife aspect, that, when the soul leaves this earth plane, it doesn't cease to exist. And our ability to continue to have a relationship with that person is absolutely there. It's allowing ourselves to realize that the relationship changes, and it's different, of course, for all the reasons of why it's different, but it doesn't cease to exist. And the ability to stay in contact, to stay in touch, to know that so often our family members, our loved ones, make their transition, and they are working on our behalf. They are out there operating at a different level of, rules of engagement in terms of matter and density and 3D world, and that they become our spirit guides, our guardian angels, if you will. And so, your mom was busy with Sarah and Allison, and often they come in and they give a message. And so I've been in direct communication with loved ones who have passed when they come in to give a message to, those of us who are left here on the earth plane. And so it is an opportunity to recognize that the relationships are not over. They just look different. Yeah. So let us all remember that. Keep talking to your loved ones. Have conversations. They're there. They're listening. So we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we will hear what Kirsten has paired this episode to. So stay tuned.
Next up, Kirsten's choice for a wine to open after the show.
Thank you to Uplift Gift, our sponsor today. Uplift Gift is a gift box company that you can use to send beautiful, comforting items to your friends around the country who may be going through challenging times. These days when it is harder to get out and grab a bunch of beautiful things from around different stores in your area and then box them up and get them to the post office, Uplift Gift is there for you to select lovely items, including caramels and beautiful organic teas and a pashmina that you can send to your friends around the country if they need some uplifting. So thank you again to Uplift Gift for sponsoring the show today.
Now, what wine will Kirsten choose for your table tonight? Here she is.
Welcome back. All right, Kirsten, what have you prepared for us to pair with our show?
I had so much fun with this one, Dannielle.
Mom's wishes. Take it away.
Mom's wishes. So I am pairing today's show with a wine that is called Hook and Ladder. It is named after the tools of a firefighter. And let me tell you about the story of this. It's so fun. So 1970, there was a firefighter in San Francisco named Cecil DeLoach. And he had a wife named Christine, and he was a firefighter there in San Francisco. So the two of them decided they wanted to get more back to the earth and they didn't want to live in San Francisco anymore. So they purchased a ranch in the Russian River Valley of California called the Barbieri Ranch. Now, these two had extensive backgrounds educationally in anthropology. Neither had any experience in wine, like at all, or grape growing or anything. So Cecil keeps his day job as a firefighter, and they start studying. They literally go to community college for classes. They took a few classes at UC Davis. They start reading books on winemaking and grape growing. They also had neighbors in that area that they'd bought this land who were very generous to help them learn about grape growing and that. So you may have heard of DeLoach Winery. They actually opened DeLoach Vineyards in 1975. So this is 5 years later. Very, very famous winery nationally at the very least. And Cecil and Christine emerge as like leaders in the Russian River Valley area. And they actually are instrumental. They were part of the instrumental team that went to the governing board that decides when a new appellation is named in the US. So an appellation is an area where they're growing wine. They're called AVAs, American Viticultural Areas. So they actually were instrumental, and another team with other growers in the area, of getting the Russian River Valley to be its own AVA, which has become much more famous now as it's been, let's see, it was 1983 that they got that instilled. So you can use Russian River Valley on your labels, which meant a lot to people. So that's lovely. They're making their wine and everything, but then they sold Deloach Vineyards in 2003 to a French family. They let the French into the Russian River Valley. I don't know if anybody in the area will forgive them. I don't know. But anyway, in 2003, right after they sell the Deloach, they open Hook and Ladder Winery just down the street from where their Deloach vineyards were. And they start making wine there, growing grapes. Now their grandson, Jason Deloach, is the winemaker for the winery now. And they produce Pinot Noir, Old Vine Zinfandel, which have been growing there on their property for over 100 years, Petite Sirah, Chardonnay, Cab, and Bordeaux style blends. And this is the coolest thing before I go into the actual wine I'm pairing today. I want to go see this. In their tasting room at Hook and Ladder, they've had firefighters from all over the world bring their station t-shirt into the tasting room. So their walls are covered with firefighter station t-shirts from all over the world. I just want to go see that. That's just so cool.
Right, like a fire museum.
And like a fire museum of t-shirts for these very brave men and women. So anyway, we are talking today. I'm going to take their wine of the Hook and Ladder, and we're going to talk about a Petite Estate Syrah, or Estate, excuse me, I'm going to flip that. Estate Petite Sirah, because that's the name of the grape. Petite Sirah, this is a 2016, but it doesn't matter. Get any one of their, come on, Kirsten, years, vintages. Golly, it's been a while since I've taught anything. And so Petite Sirah, if you like the grape Syrah or Shiraz, this has absolutely nothing to do with that grape. It is spelled differently. It is a completely different grape. And people think, because of the name, which I totally understand, is petite, which we all think of as lesser, smaller, less strong, petite. And then Syrah, you say the name Syrah and you hear the word spelled Syrah. That's the French spelling, or you hear Shiraz, which is many of the New World areas call this grape Shiraz. But Petite Sirah, and that is spelled Sirah. Petite Sirah is a completely different grape. And it was named for the size of the grapes. So they are some of the smallest types of wine grapes that are used to make wine. And so we've talked a lot about how wine is made. So I'll just lightly touch on that. So, you're taking grapes and you're squeezing them, and then you're letting the grapes sit on the skins and the seeds in that to pick up the color and the tannin in that from the skins and the seeds. Well, if you have smaller grapes, that means you have a higher ratio of juice to skins. You literally, a lower ratio of juice to skins. So what that means is there's less juice to sit on more skin, which means that juice that's in there is picking up all of that tannin and all of that complexity and character from the skins and the seeds. And we're talking about like This wine practically doesn't need a glass. It's so strong. It's like you pour it into air and it will stand up. It's one of the most tannic grapes, and tannin, remember, it's that grippy stuff that you get in your mouth from red wines. It is so tannic. And I just think you hear of Hook and Ladder Winery, and they make a Petite Sirah, which sounds like a small thing, but no, it's got the most chest hair of any wine that the whole winery makes. So this Petite Sirah offers, when you get it in your mouth, actually it's also not just a Russian River Valley. It's actually, you may have heard of Chalk Hill. So this is a Chalk Hill Russian River Valley appellated wine. So a very small area of that region. And it's super dark. Like it's like dark purple. And we're talking about plum and clove and like dried blueberries, if you ever ate those. Like really deep fruit, very deep fruit. And then you've got this kind of, when it sits in the oak and everything, it gets almost a maple kind of a flavor to it. And then it has the tannin that can just clean your mouth better than a dentist can of anything in your mouth. So if you're going to go taste a Petite Sirah or specifically this one, and these retail around $30 nationally, this Petite Sirah, that Hook and Ladder. And what you want is a lot of fat or richness in the dish that you're going to serve this with. So, for example, Chateaubriand is a brown butter-based sauce that's poured on and wine and such onto a steak, like that kind of thing, where you've got not just the fat of the meat, but also a sauce that is super, super dense with fatness and richness. Because that tannin, remember, tannin's like sandpaper for your tongue. So when you've got such a heavy, coarse sandpaper like Petite Sirah is, you want to have a lot of really strong richness and fat on your tongue that tannin can come in and really sandpaper off your tongue so that you taste the next bite better. So that is my pairing. Hook and Ladder 2016 Estate Petite Sirah at about $30 nationally, for our episode on Mom's wishes. And one of Mom's final wishes was her getting first dibs on those cute firefighters that were going to come over and carry her around the house. So do you have any questions, Dannielle?
I do not, except that I am looking forward to the day that I get to go try this 2016 Petite Sirah.
Yum.
Yeah.
Yum. Well, you guys, it's been really fun to have you here for this season. It's been a challenging one for me emotionally, but very cathartic as well, to get to talk to my friend Dannielle, who was along on the ride with me. And I also hope that we've provided some resources for you to find tools if you're facing a loved one getting old, if you have just found, a loved one that needs some help. We hope that we've provided that for you. And always remember as well that we have our website, and it's winesandwonders.com. And we have all of the show notes there so that you can go to links, not just for the wines, but also for any books we referred to, websites we've talked about. So you can go there. And if you want, give us your email, because we'll keep you updated. Because as soon as COVID is done, which is, we hope soon, we might be doing some trips and fun things as a group. So let us know who you are. So thanks.
One last thing,
Yes.
Actually, Kirsten, I do have one last thing, resource. We talked about what I was able to assist your mom with in doing that energetic clearing. And there are a couple resources for you out there, listeners. If you have a loved one who is in the transition phase, there is an organization or a service that is called Death Doulas. DOULAS, and they're the ones that really assist that loved one in that actual transition and bring in more of that energetic aspect and that spiritual aspect in that capacity. There's also an organization or a website called dyingconsciously.org. And back in my day, when I was a part of this organization, I know that they had a resource page, and I have not visited it in a long time, but as we're just talking about this, that is popping up. So dyingconsciously.org is another resource if you're looking for somebody to come in and assist with that actual transition. And those may be helpful for those of you who are interested.
Great. Thank you for adding that, Dannielle. All right, guys, we're going to take a break and start the next season soon, which is going to be focused on something really cool that you can use in your own life repeatedly. And I'll leave you with that, and we'll look forward to having you back next season when we start back up. Thanks for joining.
We look forward to sharing a new story and wine with you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Wines and Wonders.